my name is Gareth. You're watching the Hub Online Network, and today we have Jonah Timms. He is the candidate running in the Fraser-Nicola for the Green Party. So let's let Jonah say hi.
Hi, everyone. Like was said, my name is Jonah Timms. I'm running as your Green candidate for the Fraser-Nicola riding, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Awesome. So, Jonah, why don't you take this opportunity to tell us, or tell me and the viewers a little bit about yourself and why you chose that the Green Party is the right party for you?
Absolutely. So a little bit about me is I was raised in a small town, Clearwater, north of Kamloops, and my father was a single-parent dad raising 3 boys. So life was a little bit difficult for us at times, and really we depended on a lot of the services and the nonprofits in our community to help our family out, because as a single father, one income often wasn't enough. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get some scholarships and go to university at Victoria, where I got a degree in geography. I met my wife at university, and then after we got married, we spent the next several years traveling around from summer contract to summer contract, doing environmental work with the Alberta government, with Parks Canada, and then I spent about 10 months in New Zealand, a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And now I live in Lillooet, where I'm the First Nations Relations Advisor for the Ministry of Forests. So I really care about listening to people and hearing what they have to say, and ensuring that our communities have the resources that they need to supply the jobs that are required to ensure that our communities remain resilient and strong, and are able to weather a lot of the upcoming challenges that we're going to face in the next coming years.
You're the First Nations. So sorry. What was that job?
It's a long name. So I am the First Nations Relations Advisor with the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development. So what my job is that I talk to First Nations governments and communities, and discuss permits that industry wants to have permitted in the local area, and so often that means that I'm talking to First Nations about their culture and their views and their traditional knowledge, and I'm looking at how we can incorporate that into existing permits for industry, and ways to that those permits, such as forestry permits and range use permits, and how we can get those permits to align better with traditional ecological knowledge, and ensuring that the rights that are guaranteed to Indigenous peoples through Section 35 of the Constitution are respected.
Just to refresh my memory, what's Section 35 of the Constitution?
So Section 35 of the Constitution is the one that guarantees Indigenous people the right to. It essentially says that they have been here before us, and that they have special rights according to that.
Okay. Having watched a video that you made a little while ago, one of the things that you do bring up in that video is reconciliation. So what, in your views, as a running member as an MLA, what would you do specifically? What are your thoughts on reconciliation specifically?
My thoughts on reconciliation are that the government hasn't been doing enough on reconciliation in the past. We took a big step last year by implementing what is the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Essentially, it is bringing in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People into British Columbia law. And it was a really good first step, but a lot of folks have been telling me that it's just enabling legislation, which is essentially saying that it's legislation that lets the government do other things. And one thing that really needs to be done is that our current laws in this province need to be changed so that they have Indigenous values incorporated into them, so that they are more respectful of Indigenous rights and title in this province.
So this election sort of seemingly came out of nowhere. When there was the talks about the possibility of a snap election. Were you in contact with anybody from the Green Party before that? Like, because you kind of knew that something was coming, or was it the snap election took place, or was called, and then you got contacted?
So I was on the the Green Party's Leaders Youth Advisory Council for the last year. It's brand new, it started last year. And so I was already slightly involved with the Green Party, but, and I have just moved to Lillooet a year and a half ago now, but I was looking to get more involved with the Green Party because all the news outlets were talking, oh, maybe there's an election this fall, right? So I was looking to get more involved with the riding association that we have, and I have always wanted to run for politics and be an MLA and affect change that way. So I heard all these rumors in the news, and so I said, hey, if there's an election, I'd love to be able to put my name forward. And so there were some talks about, these are the things that we have to do if there is an election for you to be our candidate. So I was pursuing those just in case. And then, John Horgan I think it was on a Tuesday or something, called the election. And then I started in earnest putting jumping through all the hoops that they require of you to run for a party.
Have you ever run for any other form of office, or is this your first time at the Apple?
I've never heard that saying before, but yes, this is my first time at the Apple, as you say. I've never held political office before. So.
That's quite a leap from, and this is not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's quite a leap from not going from not being in politics to jumping to an MLA. That takes a lot of guts, I would say. And you are fairly young. How old are you?
I'm 26.
Holy snaky. Okay. I actually thought that you were probably at least 30.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's the facial hair.
Maybe.
That's why I do it.
So awesome. Okay. Now the Green Party itself, because I try to talk about, especially since the election was called, I try to talk about every political party as much as I can in my news show that I do here at the Hub Online Network. And up until last Friday, when I went to go see what your guys' platform was, there wasn't anything on the website yet. And then as of this week, there's now things populated in the platform part of your website. Can you walk us through what some of the major points are for the Green Party platform?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different parts of our platform, and this year I've heard a lot about people think that the Green Party is only concerned about climate change and forests and making sure that we shut down resource management in the province. And I want to come out and say that that's not what the Green Party is about. We are certainly the party that is most concerned about climate change, and I feel like we have the strongest action on climate change, such as eliminating, really, subsidies on fossil fuels in the province, which amount to almost $1 billion a year. Another part of our platform is that we want to incorporate early childhood education into the public school system to enable children that aren't in kindergarten or K-12 school system to be receiving early childhood education. This is good for families, it will move them forward, and it will reduce some of the causes that allow some of the larger problems in society to continue, like addictions and homelessness. And speaking of homelessness, we are also coming out with a $500 million renters support program,
Okay.
which will help low to middle income earners help them out with their rent in this very difficult time. We also have a small business grant program going along, which will also help out small businesses with their rent, and that will be to the tune of about $300 million a year as well. Lastly, I mean, our platform is many pages online long, but the last one that I'll mention here is our mental health platform plank. We want to incorporate mental health into the medical services that we support and provide here in the province. And in so doing, we'll help destigmatize mental health issues like addiction, and we'll be able to support people getting the help that they need when they need it the most.
So that's sort of the more grandiose things for the whole party.
Yeah.
Now, the riding that you're running in is vast. I'm not sure. I don't think it's necessarily the biggest riding. I don't know, but it's pretty big. All things taken, with a lot of different municipalities, a lot of different Indigenous bands. So, what do you feel that you can accomplish if you were elected in our riding of Fraser-Nicola?
One thing that I feel like I can accomplish is supporting our small communities in maintaining the level of services that we've all come to depend on, things like our healthcare and our infrastructure, such as our roads. I know that some industries and some companies have spoken to me about the conditions that some of our highways are in are not conducive to allowing large trucks, like logging trucks, on them. They are not maintained to the level that they should be, and they need to be changed. And that's adding costs to industries, small businesses and larger businesses that many of our residents here in the riding depend on, such as forestry. One other thing that I feel like I could support and work on it within the riding is, a lot of businesses are struggling right now. We didn't have an international tourism season like we typically do, and a lot of businesses are finding it a difficult time. And I'm happy to say that the party and myself are supportive of a rental support program, and I would fight to get as many small businesses within the riding to apply for that program and get funding for it. Whether that means that I'm helping businesses with their application, or just bringing the needs of Fraser-Nicola up during debate in the legislature. A lot of folks are worried about resource management in this province and the fate of the forestry industry, and I want to say that I fully support forestry in this riding and in the province, but we need to do it sustainably and in a way that manages our forests not only for timber values, but for wildlife and water as well, to protect those values as well. So those are ways that I can support the riding locally, and I feel like my relationship with industry, ranchers, and Indigenous communities through my work with the Ministry of Forests is all conducive to forming those relationships and being able to sit down and talk about the real issues that need to be addressed. I'm always willing to listen, and I'm always willing to speak up about what I believe in, and that's why I'm running, and that's I believe that those skills will be good competencies for me to use when I'm in Victoria and even back in the riding listening to people.
It just popped in my head. Are you the youngest person running for an MLA seat?
I am not. The BC Greens have she was 17 when the election was called.
Oh my goodness.
She is now 18, and she's running in my in-laws riding down on the island, actually. So Kate O'Connor is her name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you never campaigned before. What are your thoughts so far on the process? Has there been any highlights for you? Things that you've done so far. Have you found it challenging? Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, having never campaigned before, I don't know what it was like campaigning before COVID-19, but I feel like it's quite difficult to get out and meet folks. So that's going to be my low light of the campaign, is that I'm not able to get out and meet as many people as I wanted to. We're active on Instagram. We're active on all the social media, all the big ones, anyways. But it's difficult. So, but one of my highlights happened last weekend. My great-grandparents live up in Clinton, or my great-grandmother does now. My grandfather passed away. She was so proud, and her face lit up when she was able to put in that lawn sign with my name on it. And my uncles are all saying, "Vote for the Tims. He's from Clinton." And so, and that was while we were in Clinton, we did a sine wave, and we got lots of honks and lots of thumbs up and excited people. So, I like being out there and interacting with people, and that's a little bit of a personal highlight for me was seeing my great-grandmother, who's 86 now, be able to vote for her great-grandson on the ballot. So that was a little bit of a personal highlight. But really, anytime I'm out at farmers markets, interacting with small business owners, I was at Cache Creek Farmers Market a few weeks ago, and I was down in Lytton Farmers Market last week. Those are all highlights for me because it's strange. I picture myself as an introvert, but when I get out onto the farmers market and I put on my green pin, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. I'm excited to hear people and help people solve their problems. So.
Have you, so you recently moved to Lillooet. Are you seeing more of this riding? Like, are there places that you've never been before that you're now visiting for the very first time because you're campaigning?
My work took me pretty much throughout the entire riding. I do work in Merritt, I do work up in Goldbridge, I work in, around Spence's Bridge and Lytton. So the only place that I think that I have traveled for the first time is the highway between Merritt and Ashcroft. I've never had to drive from Merritt to Ashcroft before the campaign. I've been to Ashcroft previously for basketball games in high school, and so we've spent Christmases and summers up in Clinton and up in 70 Mile, so I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp of, I've seen most of the riding here already before the campaign, and the only one was just me driving by Highland Valley there, which was surprising just how big it is. As a green candidate, does the mine, as you drive past it, does the mine bother you at all, or? It's difficult. I understand that we do need some of those extractive industries. They're great supports for our local communities. It's a great source of tax revenue for the government, and from what I've never really spoken to Indigenous communities about Highland Valley, but but just driving by it, it's really big. But and I just, in the future, we need to ensure that we're working. When we do approve those large projects, we need to ensure that our water is being taken care of, that wildlife still have habitat, and that their migration routes aren't being compromised, and that the Indigenous communities are properly consulted, and that those decisions are made in a true government-to-government relationship, which is something that we haven't had in this province before.
How do you feel that so talking about Indigenous groups, how do you feel that your experience is viable to bridge that gap between the two government bodies?
I have found in my work as a First Nations advisor and in my personal life that a lot of people seem hesitant and almost they're a little bit nervous to speak to Indigenous communities and First Nations, and I certainly feel very comfortable talking to them and working on solving problems, because that's what I do every day for work. So I feel that as an MLA, I would certainly be wanting to have better and more consistent conversations with our First Nations communities in the riding, because I feel that, they are, we should be working on all of this as a government-to-government relationship, and that's something that the province is working on, and we've taken a few good steps, but there's a long road ahead of us, and part of that is being open and communicative and being able to listen really well, because I forget who mentioned it to me, but just this summer somebody told me you don't learn very much when you're speaking. You learn the most when you're listening to other people, and that's just one of my. I feel like I listen pretty well, so I'm happy to do that. And as your MLA, I would certainly work on improving those relationships because it's something that I care deeply about. I recognize that there have been a lot of injustices done in the past, and I certainly don't believe that we should forget those injustices, but we need to be working on improving our relationship. And part of that is recognizing what has been happening in the past and what's happening today even, and working on not making it disappear or not forgetting about it, but just trying to reconcile those relationships and make sure that we're going forward in a more honest and transparent way.
When or if you are elected,
When?
I have to be
I know.
careful. You know what? Okay. When you get elected, what would be your plan for keeping in touch with the other areas of the riding? And if you don't get elected, what is your plan? Do you plan to run again on, even for city council? Like now that you had a taste of political life, is it ingrained in you, or do you think that this is sort of a one and done situation for yourself?
So to answer your first question, when I am elected, I certainly, just saying that makes me smile. It's exciting. I understand that our riding is quite large, 70 Mile all the way down to Hope, and I live in Lillooet, I completely plan on ensuring that I visit all the communities on a consistent basis, because as your MLA, I feel like that's half my job is listening to what everybody has to say, and then the other half is going to Victoria and following through on what you want me to do in Victoria. And being a Green is great for that, because the Green Party, I don't have to necessarily, as they say, toe the party line. We don't whip our votes, unlike the NDP and the Liberal parties. So I would be able to vote with my conscience on bills. So certainly I want to listen, and I understand that Hope and Merritt are our two big centers, so I certainly want to ensure that that I get to those communities, but smaller communities like Goldbridge and 70 Mile and Clinton, the voters in those areas, their opinions are just as valid as those in Merritt or even Vancouver, for that matter. The second part of your question, if I remember correctly, was, I like it. I like being on the campaign trail. This is my first time, but I feel like, as you brought up, I'm young, and I feel like I bring a youthful vigor to the trail. I've had a few of my volunteers say that they really like volunteering with a young candidate. I bring, like I said, I bring an excitement and a level of, my generation is the generation that's going to have to live through the next 70 years. So I know that I'm going to have to grapple with the effects of climate change. I know that I'm going to have to grapple with the effects of a really great economy or an economy that is going by the wayside. So, I'm not a selfish person, and I want to act on behalf of everybody in the riding, but for those who say that I'm too young or that I'm not experienced enough, I say that, this is my riding and it's my life, that I don't want to have to live in a climate crisis. I don't want to have to evacuate my towns every summer because of larger and larger wildfires every year. So certainly I feel like I love the campaign trail. And just last night, my wife was saying, after you've run, maybe you should run for city council. And I kind of thought about it, but not very seriously until last night. So I don't know. I'll have to give it a thought when that comes up.
Do you speak with other Green candidates? Do you guys have some kind of a weekly quorum that, via Zoom you get together and chat about what other ridings are doing? Does your leader, Sonia, check in with you at all?
So I'm not sure how other political parties do it, but the Green Party uses an online platform called Slack, and we have so many different message boards on there, and essentially it's like how do I explain it? It's like a Twitter or a Facebook feed, but for everyone involved in the party. So that's candidates and volunteers and people who work for the Green Party in Victoria, and we'd get daily emails sent out to us to say, this is, Sonia said something about this, or another candidate has a media release in Vancouver, and this is what they said. So we try to keep up on ourselves that way, but there's no dedicated weekly Zoom call per se. But often, I forget what day being on the campaign, I forget what day it is all the time, but just a few days ago, another candidate down in Mission and I were on the same call, and we were talking about how we can address problems in our particular areas between the Mission riding and Fraser-Nicola as well, because we're a connected province, and we do need to start talking about how our policies and how Green Party people are figuring stuff out between ridings, because a lot of people have very similar concerns. Lastly, I'll say that I do get daily itineraries for Sonia, but I haven't received a direct email from her yet. So, she's a busy woman too, so.
Oh, yeah. And especially since, what does she have, 10 days as being leader before the election was called?
Maybe 10
Yeah.
days? Yeah.
So, I don't, not only is she having to start out as leader, now she's having to run the whole kit and caboodle in her first month, right? So I can see her being a busy person. If you had one bucket list thing, so let's just say that someone said to you, you can have all the money that you possibly need to do one thing, you got your one term to do this, what would you do for Fraser-Nicola? You name it.
Yep. One thing that I've heard a lot about, there's so many things, but I have to choose one thing. So one thing that I've heard a lot from the Indigenous communities in the riding is that they want a greater say in how resources are managed throughout their territories. And to do that, they need government-to-government agreements. Excuse me. Some of our First Nations have these government-to-government agreements, and unfortunately, some communities don't. And it creates a little bit of, it makes it difficult to work together when both sides aren't, they don't want to, they're upset that they're not receiving the funding that is required, because just last week I was speaking to a community's chief and a councillor, and they were saying we are swamped with resource requests, and we just don't have the money to be able to adequately look at all of these requests and get back to government or get back to the companies that need our response. So I would work on ensuring that each of our nations in the riding have government-to-government agreements, which will create consistency for our resource companies, like our logging companies and our mining companies. It will create employment for our First Nations communities and for our mills and for everyone else in our communities through increased tourism, through increased small businesses, and it will create just better relationships with our First Nations, with the First Nations in our riding, and between the province as well. So to sum it all up, my one wish list item would be to ensure that First Nations governments and communities have a proper government-to-government relationship with the province, And I know that's going to take money and it's going to take funding, and I want those changes to happen. And I want those government-to-government relationships to come with adequate resourcing and adequate funding. So that would be my one thing.
Awesome. For campaigning, do you, so a lot of people have a team of people that would drive them around, set up their appointments, but the email that I received from you is from you, I presume. So do you have a driver? Do you get? So the only reason I ask is in my experience with Green Party people, and especially because this is a snap election, funding is always a concern. And I've never ran for an MLA. I've run for city council once, but I've never ran as an MLA, so I don't know what that looks like. So how do you get around the riding and do all of the things that you have to do?
Well, if it's during the week, I typically drive myself. My wife works on the weekends, on the weekdays. So fortunately, she was able to take the afternoon off, so she drove me here today.
Oh, good.
Yep, and she drove me to Clinton last weekend, but I don't have a dedicated driver, that's for sure. And yeah, the email that you received was sent from me, so yeah, it's hard to find volunteers because we can't do these big events, and some people aren't really comfortable calling people, or some people aren't comfortable doing stuff in person. So it's trying to match volunteers to how they're most comfortable interacting with the public. So and certainly donations have been coming in, but we were planning on doing a lot of Facebook ads and having ads on radios, and we had to make some more realistic budgeting choices this week because COVID-19 has made things difficult for a lot of folks, and I understand that. I understand that a lot of families are struggling to put food on the table, and I would rather a family have food on the table than to donate to my campaign. And yeah, coming from a family who also struggled to have food on the table growing up, I completely understand the need to prioritize our family budgets more so this time around.
Let's give the audience a little bit of a chance just to get to know you a little bit. So let's put politics aside.
Okay.
What are a couple hobbies that you have?
Hobbies? Well, in warmer weather, I like to go hiking and camping. But I also...
Sorry. There you are.
Okay. But I also really like to sit down on the couch and play some video games. So my wife, she joins me sometimes, but I play a lot myself. So
What do you play? I'm a bit of a gamer myself. So what do you play?
I'm playing Halo. I'm playing the Master Chief Collection.
Okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
So that's most of my time. Well, I don't have any spare time during the campaign, but if I wasn't campaigning, that's usually what I'm doing in my spare time is playing video games or going out on hiking and walking. And my wife likes to take me out for walks every day. And one thing that I've found is really entertaining for my wife and I is that across the street from our house we have the folks have 2 dogs in their yard, and they're just like the biggest, most lovable dogs that I've ever seen. So those 2 dogs bring an untold measure of joy into my life. Trying to think, what else do I like to do?
I think hiking and playing video games kind of covers it. I mean, that's really what the world should be, is hiking and video games.
I like to play Dungeons and Dragons sometimes too.
Okay.
So I think they used to be called Dungeon Masters, but now they're called Game Masters. So
And I think it's the PC name, is Game Master.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I'm a Game Master for Dungeons and Dragons too. So that's always fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just like talking and coming up with stories, and that's my thing.
Sweet. Okay, well that's so. If you had a closing statement what would you like to say to the audience? Pitch them why we should vote for you. 2020 election. Go.
So, like I said, my name's Jonah. I'm 26 years old. A lot of folks say that I might be too young, but I feel like the younger generations are coming up into politics right now, and they're just seeing that we're not being listened to. And I understand that under 30 is one of the largest voting blocks that we have in the province, and a lot of us don't get out and vote. So, as a young person myself, I'm getting out there, I'm putting my name out there, and I know that I have good ideas. I want to make positive change in our riding, and by doing that, we can ensure that everybody has a better community, a better job, a better life. And I see when I come into a town, I see so much potential. Our towns are doing the best that they can, but there's a lot of ways that we can improve those services. And consecutive Liberal and NDP governments just haven't, one government doesn't like to talk about the issues. They don't even have climate change mentioned once in their platform, and the other party is just content with fiddling around the edges. They're not really willing to take the problems on head on. So myself and the Green Party, we're willing to take on those challenges. We're ready to speak truth to power, and I really just want to make positive change, and I'm tired of asking other people to make that change for me. And I want to be doing the one. I want to be the one making those positive changes for the riding. So I'm Jonah Timms. I'm your Green candidate for Fraser-Nicola, and I am going to be very excited to hear from you all. And you can always find me on social media at Jonah Timms.
Well, thank you very much for your time. For everybody at home, Jonah is going to be participating in our All Candidates Forum tonight. Now, when you watch this, the forum will be done, but you can watch the forum on our YouTube channel, Hub Online Network on YouTube, and you can check out everything Jonah has to say. You can follow him on Facebook and Twitter like I do. And thank you very much for coming in, and we will follow your campaign closely.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been